Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Welcome to the 3Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with yours truly here, the old salty dog John Martin, and the captain of our pirate ship, none other than Ted Yoho. Ted has been on assignment, but he's back in the fold, back in the big city of Welaka, Florida, and I'm coming to you.
Welaka.
How are you, Ted?
I'm doing great, man. You know, I'm doing really good because I was in Aspen at a think tank and I was thinking a lot out there. But when I left, the blind mosquitoes, I mean, you couldn't even go outside. They were so bad. And when I came back, they're gone. So I'm doing great.
Well, at least those don't bite you, but they will freak you out, man. The
blind you can't even breathe. Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen them where they're, when you cross, the creek there by Noonan's Lake here on 20 at certain times of the year, they're so bad they literally will black out your windshield.
Yeah, they really are. It's amazing.
It's incredible. But so before I'll tell you a little bit about my trip in a minute, but since you mentioned yours, go ahead and tell us what you've been up to, Ted.
Well, I've been invited to be at the Aspen Institute, and it's a think tank, left-leaning, obviously, and I'm one of the lone conservatives on it. And the whole thing is to bring back foreign assistance, you know, in some form. There's 34 think tanks trying to bring back, you know, something like USAID. USAID will never come back under this administration or another conservative, but there are good forms of foreign assistance that we can go in. And my whole thing when we put the BUILD Act in, you know, the United States International Development Finance Corporation, was what I had learned is we had just been giving perpetual aid out, and it hasn't done a lot of good. In fact, in the DRC, their gross or earned income has gone down over the last 20 years. And we put billions of dollars, not just us, but other nations around the world. Even today in Africa, approximately 85% of their food is imported. 85% of their food. Think of that. They're one of they're 1.4 billion. Their population's supposed to double by 2050, and they got to import 85% of their food, and that's where the biggest amount of starvation is. And so after all these years, and they've got to import that much food. The other thing is their discretionary income that goes to food when they can buy it is over 40% of their income. So aid is going to come back in some form. We want to make sure that it's not perpetual aid, that they're moving from aid to trade through infrastructure projects so that they can create an economy around that. And the way our program is set up, it's not a grant, it's a loan. So we get the American taxpayers get paid back. But all these groups are coming back to try to imagine something. And it wasn't very friendly to the Trump administration, I can tell you that.
Well, imagine that. I mean,
yeah.
It's insane what the TDS. I don't talk about aid, but since you mentioned that, I don't know if you saw where United Airlines now, and I don't know if any others are doing it, but they've actually come out with a policy that since the airport down there has now been named the Trump Airport as opposed to what it was before, that they're offering you can switch your flight to another airport down in that area for free if you don't want to fly into Trump National, International, whatever.
I tell you what, that's just, we've gone crazy.
This is crazy.
Well, and I know you're going to have that video of Hassan Piker. It's people like him. I listened to that whole tape of his, and it's just emptiness. There's nothing there that he is offering people other than he's stirring them up, and he's got his little revolutionary outfit on. The guy just seems to be an empty suit, but he sure has a big following.
There's no doubt about it. But back to your aid to trade and all, I'm 100% in favor of that. And let's just speak about Africa specifically, since you were talking about it. I have no issue with trying to help build aid to trade and whatever that may entail. It may entail infrastructure, all of that kind of stuff. I have no issue with that. I have, there may be some limitations, of course, but I have no issue with trying to help with the health issues like Ebola and stuff like that, because quite frankly, if we don't, it could come here. So, I have no issue with building trading partners. It's when we start doing social engineering and that type of stuff
Absolutely.
that if they want to do that, for instance, I'm not knocking if you want to do something about transgender, whatever, that's fine if that's what your country wants to do. But that shouldn't come from us because it has nothing to do with aid to trade and healthcare and all of that kind of stuff. So I'm open to that possibility. The problem with USAID is it just became a open bank card, basically an ATM for all kind of nonsense.
For the liberal progressives, it really did, and we tried to get them into the Foreign Affairs Committee, and they wouldn't come in. They would not come in, and they just got to where they were. They thought they were their own ruling party, and they were. And we can talk more about that on another segment. But they want to bring this back, and I keep pushing back. I said, listen, I've been out of Congress for 5 years. I still have ambassadors telling me how toxic those programs were, doing transgenderism and the abortions in countries that don't believe that. But yet we're putting that as a hook on getting aid, that they have to follow that stuff. In the meantime, China's going in there, not telling them how to live, and they give loans to own. Meaning they give loans that have a lot of hooks in it. And if you can't pay it back, they wind up taking property. And they've done that around the world. And so we're in a competition here. So if we pull out altogether, China is going to go in there. They're going to have access to all the rare earth minerals. They already control that market. But they're going to set standards on the AI. And there's a reason that all the control towers in the world speak English. It's because the United States set that standard. If China sets the standard on AI going into the future and quantum computing, the game's over because they'll control that. And so that's why we have to be engaged in this. You just can't step out of that. But there are some good things that do come out of this. If we can develop an economy, they start buying implements from American manufacturers, and we can use some of those tools. And our goal is to walk away from that after they get an economy so that we're good trading partners and you have less conflicts. But the program that we've used for the last 100 years is not working. And I kept emphasizing that. I said, why do you want to go back in there? I said, tell me where it's worked really well. And so I'm the one that's pushing back on that. And it's painful. It's kind of like you say, I watch Morning Joe, so you don't have to. I go to these things, and it's painful. And I have to stand up for what America stands for, our values, and I defend Trump as much as I can. Some things you just can't defend him on, and I'm not going to try. But we'll stand up for what America stands for and the force of good it's been. And if it wasn't for America, a lot of those countries wouldn't even be around.
Absolutely. They need to be a think tank, like thank you tank as opposed to think tank as well. But I just got a message for the think tankers out there. All you need to do is listen to the captain of our pirate ship, Ted Yoho.
That's right.
You'll be all right. Well, I had a great weekend myself, Ted. I
saw that.
Got a picture here, man. I won double jackpots. I got a big red snapper. Even the one on the ground there is one that I caught. That red snapper there is right at 20 pounds, 19 and a half
Holy
pounds.
Mackerel.
And I caught a mutton snapper there that was like 8 pounds. And of course, the gentleman, the one is the captain holding money, and the other guy got the grouper jackpot. But I had a jam up trip. So
sounds like
it was a great weekend.
I said holy mackerel, but I should have said holy snapper.
There you go. Talking about a great weekend, the World Cup came to a conclusion. And to me, I watched a little bit of that final match. I saw the president give out the trophies and that kind of thing. And I got to say that, of course, congratulations to Spain for winning the World Cup 2 times in the last 15 years. And they won the Euro Cup. I don't know that much about soccer, but apparently it's the first time that a team has held both simultaneously. So congratulations to them, but also congratulations to the USA. I mean, by all accounts, we put on a spectacular event here. I know some of it was in Canada and Mexico, but the bulk was in the United States of America. And I think it was a win-win for the world and for the USA. And God help us, they don't want to give Donald Trump any credit. But I think coinciding with our 250 and how he blended it in, I got to tip my hat to everybody involved in it.
And I think the goodwill that comes out here again, this is soft diplomacy. When you have all these countries coming to America and really enjoying it and seeing America is not what they see on the news, that is soft diplomacy. And you can do it through sports, you can do it through foreign assistance, but those are things that make us safer in the world because it's an ugly world out there right now, John, as you know. And everybody's focused on the war with Israel and Palestine. And there's a lot of Palestinians at this meeting, more than I've ever seen before. And, with what's going on with Iran. So there's a lot of bad stuff going on. And yeah, we're involved in a lot of that, or in the periphery of that. But it's to bring calm to the area. And, people realize that. It was funny because I went out with somebody who is a Vietnam veteran. No, not a Vietnam veteran, but a refugee. And I talked about this on Friday. She's a Vietnam refugee. She's been here. She's in her 50s. And she was telling me how bad our policies are. And I said, well, why did you come here? And why? And she's up in Brooklyn. And it was interesting because when I went to leave, she goes, here's my card. I want to stay in touch with you because she's saying all this stuff that's not true. And it was like we're out and we had a burger, her and another guy, and Trump's policies against Muslims. They said, oh, he's got a Muslim ban on and it's really toxic. I said, no, let's back up. The ban you say that he has on Muslim countries, or he had in his first term, I said, that was the same ban that Obama had. And they said, oh, no, it wasn't. I said, yes, it was. And I said, you go back and check. I know this for a fact. So Obama put those on. Trump kept them on. Of course, Trump gets blamed for being anti-Muslim, but those bans were in place because those countries did not have the security like a TSA to go through to screen passengers, so they couldn't do that. And it was funny because she came up to me at the end of the meeting. I left early, and she gave me her card. She goes, "I want to stay in touch with you." And I told her, she goes, "I'm going to turn you into a Democrat." I started laughing. I said, that'll never happen. But I do see a little glimmer of hope of you becoming a Republican.
Absolutely. Well, the World Cup, proved exactly what you were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the congratulations to Spain, the United States of
Yeah.
America, because the Europeans, I still think one of the greatest things I heard, I think it was from an English tourist over here for the World Cup. He said, and I'm paraphrasing a bit, he said, if you want to hate America, watch the news. If you want to love America, come and visit it. And then another gentleman from Australia was here in Florida, and he literally said, he was only like 19 or 20. He literally said that he'd been lied to his whole life about the United States of America, and that it was a wonderful country, including the beaches in Florida. So these Europeans that actually have come here and given us a fair shake have left here just amazed at the United States of America.
No, they really are. And they're getting the actual, that's where you go out and you find the truth. You go out and do your own research. You don't listen to the garbage on TV. The only truth you're going to get is on this show. So watch this one.
Yeah, there's an interesting truth about to happen in the UK. I think today is when Starmer steps down. As far left as he is, the guy that's taking his place today is apparently further left than him. So the UK is definitely moving in a crazy direction, but there may be some backlash. We'll have to watch and see. And of course, we'll cover it as time goes on there. But it's interesting that they're going. I didn't think you could go further left than Starmer, but apparently you can.
They have the hatred for their country like they do, and of course he ties it into America. It's we're the evil Satan, and they're picking up the mantra of the Ayatollahs. These people need to take just a reality check of what's going on around them. And, this is the time we kind of lock arms. and work to keep I don't want to say the peace because there's not a lot of peace, to keep us out of World War III.
Absolutely. We're going to play a very brief video here of President Trump at the World Cup. There's not a lot of dialogue in it, but I just wanted to show you there. They're playing the tail end of the Star Spangled Banner. Melania looks incredible. Trump, the media is trying to
I've never
portray it.
seen her not look incredible.
Yeah, that's true. That's pretty obvious. You're right about that, Captain. But I mean, they talk about Trump being booed and all that, and there was some of that, but that's just par for the course and all that. But overall,
those were the Americans.
Yeah, they probably were. But overall, it was a spectacular event. Let's play a little bit of that, and we'll come right back. And there you have it. I mean, Donald Trump, love him, hate him, whatever. The first couple there, Donald Trump and Melania, I mean, they show elegance and pride in America. You may not agree with President Trump's policies, which is okay, but I don't understand how you couldn't say that he represents, especially through this World Cup, he represented the United States of America and really the world very well.
He does do that. I mean, that is America. He's brash, loud spoken, but we needed that after Joe Biden and Barack Obama that went around on an apology tour when he got elected. So, no, I'm glad to see that. And again, John, it's like you said, these people came over to America and they got the real view of what America is. They saw the friendliness of the people, the openness of the people, and the freedoms that we have that they don't have in their country. And I don't want to say excess, but we're not hurting for a lot. Yeah, there are some people out there, and we have a social program pretty much for anything somebody needs. The problem is today, though, people think it's a right and they abuse that. And people like Ilhan Omar up there that puts in bills that creates luring centers and robs the American taxpayers out of their money that goes to bad causes.
Yeah, well, I was thinking about it, that really what Europeans found out are the ABCs of America. The air conditioning, the bathrooms, and the commodities, the foods and stuff you could actually buy here. The ABCs overwhelm them because you've traveled much more than me, but I've been to Europe myself, and just the bathrooms and the air conditioning alone, let alone the food, the ABCs, it's amazing if you think about it.
It really is. It's funny you brought that up because I was in Aspen and it was a nice hotel I was in, big room, big bathroom, and all that. And I was thinking to myself when I was in Bellagio, that bathroom, the shower stall, I barely could get my shoulders in there and turn around. Let alone to bend over and wash my legs and all that. I mean, it was like, how do they do this? I guess, for that, I'm thankful.
Absolutely.
We're going
to take a quick commercial break, and we come back. We're going to talk about, I guess, one of Ted's favorite subjects in a way, that China is trying to take over the world, and it's pretty clear. China. He's been right about that. But make the call. Call Freddie. Be a sponsor of the show. Help us to educate, motivate, and activate people. And we're going to be back. Take us to commercial break, Ted.
Yeah, we're calling all and everybody to come one, come all to be a sponsor of the show. And the other thing is spread our program out far and wide to your internet or your email list or your whatever social media you're on. And you'll hear things and promotions like Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair. They're located at 13750 Southwest Archer Road, Archer, Florida. They're open from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Call for an appointment, 352 495-2485. Take care. We'll see you in a minute.
Hi there, this is Coach Steve Spurrier, and I want to let you know that by popular demand, Spurrier's Gridiron Grill's delicious brunch is now served in a premium buffet. You have spoken, we have listened, and we're now serving Gainesville's only elevated buffet, complete with an omelet station, ginger sage chicken sausage, shredded short rib, plus you can enjoy bottomless mimosas and Bloody Marys. So join us every Saturday and Sunday from 11 to 3 for the best brunch in town.
And we're back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast, with your host, the old salty dog, John Martin, and of course, the captain of our pirate ship, Mr. Ted Yoho. We just saw the old head ball coach, Steve Spurrier. We broadcast frequently from Spurrier's Gridiron Grill. It was an incredible place to watch the World Cup. There's going to be a little pause in sports right now other than baseball, but right around the corner is college football, and you couldn't pick a better place to go for all things sports, but especially college football, than Spurrier's Gridiron Grill.
That's right. We've got a new football coach this year, so this is the year of the Gator, hopefully.
Absolutely. Well, Ted, I like you said earlier, I often watch shows so you don't have to. But I watch Fareed Zakaria fairly regular because I do, but unlike some on the left, I believe in listening to other voices. I don't just want to be in an echo chamber all the time. And occasionally he comes up with some pretty strong points. And I think he did this time.
He does.
He's talking about China basically, and this is he has a Washington Post article, but his show talked about as well, that China's strategic gains from the Iran war are, he basically, I'll give the conclusion first and we'll come back to it. He believes that the big winner in what's happening in Iran is actually China, Ted.
No, there's no doubt about it. And there's a book I'm reading right now. It's called The Anduril Thesis. Anduril is a big defense company. It was started by Palmer Luckey and a couple other people. And Palmer Luckey created the virtual reality glasses, and he sold those at a young age, and he became a billionaire. And he's created this company that is moving from old technology, the aircraft carriers, big platforms with the different jet models, F-35s, the bombers and all that. And the new wars are going to be fought in smart technology with computers, AI, drones, things like that, like we're seeing in Ukraine. And so he goes in there and it says the amount of ammunition we have, we can fight a war with China like 5 days. We could fight it, but we couldn't go 30 days because we have spent down so much going to Ukraine, and the military industrial complex has pulled back on production. So it takes them months to get something out. Whereas China, they have their military production is tied in with their civilian production. So they can do either one on the drop of a dime. And so they have armed up, and I want people to write these numbers, the names down. And I know I think you put them on our website. If you want to know where China is going and what their intent is, read Stephen Mosier's book, The Bully of Asia. It'll tell you everything you need to know, what they're trying to do and what they are doing and what their end result is. And the other one is Michael Sobolik's. It's the reset of China, the countering China's great lead. And it goes through that. That's not the proper title. I'll get it before the show's over. But China is the one that's going to win on this because they just sit back, and this goes back to Sun Tzu and the Art of War that was written thousands of years ago. Bide your time, hide your strength, and bide your time. And that's what they're doing. Don't get engaged in long, protracted wars because it just depletes your reserves and makes you weaker. And so that's what we're doing right now. And China's just following advice from 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, they have the long view for sure. Well,
they sure do.
Makes 5 points in this, and we'll try to go through them quickly here if we can. So, number one, he says, Middle East is less dependent on the United States. And he makes a point of this. He says, there's now a bloc led by Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Oman, Iraq, and Turkey that is pursuing what he's calling a balanced relationship. In other words, they're not anti-American, but they want to keep their options open, and they're willing to talk with China and improve relations with them as a result of our Middle East policy, and specifically what is happening in Iran. And I think he's got a point there, Ted, but you follow this even closer than I do. What are your thoughts on that?
No, that's absolutely right. And there was a AI summit last week. I think it was over the weekend. Um, the United States was not there. We weren't invited. They are forming an AI consortium. They had 28 countries sign up with China to join their standards. Um, the Xi Jinping and Trump are supposed to meet, I think, this week over AI. But a lot of the Middle Eastern countries went to that one with China, and so they're looking to adapt that platform. And if this is an advancement moving into the modern age. When you go back 10 years ago, the competition was through communications, telecommunications, internet connections. So you had Huawei and ZTE, which are Chinese Communist Party companies. And our government said that they were a national security threat. So we have countries putting in that kind of technology, which means that China's in their system. So the competition was back then. Now it's going to be over AI. We had a consortium too of AI, and we have 35 countries that have signed on to ours. Some countries are sitting on the fence and they're looking at both of them. But it's the ones that, and this came out in this meeting I was at, the ones that set the AI standard are the ones that are gonna lead the world. I got to drop back to that. Michael Sobolik's book is "Countering China's Great Game," is what the name of that book is.
Yeah, check it out. If the captain recommends it, you ought to check it out. But he points out, Fareed Zakaria does, that Gulf states are buying Chinese missiles, drones, and conducting joint naval exercises, further expanding the Beijing's footprint. But he
Yep.
basically concludes on this section that the strategic effect is that China gains leverage in a region historically dominated by the U.S. without taking on costly military commitments. In other words, without firing a shot, which is exactly what you were talking about a few minutes ago.
No, they're smart about that, and you know, I would still like to hear the briefings that Trump had and his team to decide to go into Iran. From my standpoint and from my knowledge base, I don't understand why we went in there, because it's turning the world away from us. And this is what I heard in the hearing or the meetings I was at since Wednesday to Saturday, is that America's lost its stance in the world, and they see China as showing up as the world leader. You know, if you think of that, China, the world leader, and that's exactly what they want. That fits right into Stephen Mosier's book, The Bully of Asia, and Michael Sobolik's book, Countering China's Great Game.
Well, China has
And
always.
we just handed it to them because we're fighting here in this country, not focusing on the real things that we should be focusing on. Number one is our debt. Number two, and I talked about this while I was there, and people agreed. Our debt is number one. China is number two, and we're not focused on that. We're worried about we're worried about Epstein files. I mean, they're still talking about Epstein files. Give me a break. Let's talk about things that are really affecting this country, the survival of this country, and it ain't Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, obviously, China has probably ever since the New World was discovered, so to speak, has had the ambition of one day dominating the entire world.
Well, they pretty
They
much
wanted to
did in the
dominate the
old days,
known world even before that.
right? Well, and that's
But
their goal. They see themselves as the middle kingdom of the universe, not just of our planet, but of the universe.
And the craziest thing about it, Ted, to me, if you really look at it, when we're focusing on the Middle East, which is predominantly Islamic countries, China doesn't have a very good record when it comes to taking care of Muslim folks, especially ones they have control over. They're literally harvesting their organs and putting them in death camps, the Uyghur Muslims. And so, and the Arab world has to know this. So it surprises me in one sense that they think they're going to be different if China actually controls everything.
Yeah, and they're doing it to the Tibetan population, and then there's that group that came up in China, the Falun Gong. Those are the ones they're really going after because that movement got up to over 90 million people and was a peaceful and not like peaceful protests here of Antifa and that in this country. These people were out in the squares doing exercises and things like that, and it had created a movement, but China saw that as a threat. So those are the ones that are really going in and they're harvesting the organs from. I mean, just I still can't. When I say that, it's Frankensteinish, and that we buy stuff from China because it's cheap, and they're doing all these just terrible things. So yeah, China is the winner. They're just sitting back and watching us, you know, trying to be the tough guy. I guess I don't know.
Well, you kind of already covered this, but number two on Zakaria's list is that increased global dependence on Chinese technology, and he makes a point that China kind of weathered the wartime energy shocks better than people thought because they've been preparing this for quite some time. I mean, they have diversified their oil suppliers who supply. They've got a massive strategic reserve and they cut their amount of they were importing by 4 million barrels a day. And check this, they've expanded coal and nuclear power, which we have abandoned for the most part here in the United States. And they have rapidly electrified everything in their country. That 30% of their energy now comes from electricity. Now that's all kinds of different forms to do it, but they're going to total electric cars and everything else. So China is definitely trying to move ahead of us and dominate the world in preparation for energy shortages, basically.
Well, they are, and they have done a great job on the solar energy and wind, and it works for their country. But and of course, they sit there and they say, "Oh, green energy, we want to do the green energy," but they're putting up a coal powered fire electric plant once a week all over the world, but yet they're telling everybody how they're green energy, and they're getting subsidies on the green energy from all the other countries around the world that are in that Paris Climate Accord that we pulled out, and I'm glad we did because it was just it was a welfare system, and that was a lot of talk at this summit too. You know, every problem in the world, if it's not Donald Trump or America, it's from climate change, and I'm not buying into that. I'm not a climate change denier, but I think we need to be as smart as a cockroach. If the weather gets bad, you just change where your environment is, move. It's just your government is not going to solve this problem. You look at our government, we can't even pay our bills hardly, and sorry, went on a rant.
Well, to me, Ted, we haven't really talked about climate change, but I got a very simple philosophy on that. I really believe that we need to work across the board at lessening our footprint on the planet and in general. And I'm not saying curtail civilization. I'm saying find ways that we impact the environment as less as possible. And the reason why I say that, it goes back to that flight that crashed a few years ago, and they didn't know if it was where it went. So I think it's 706. Well, they were trying to search the Indian Ocean down around Australia, and they had a hard time because there was so much crap floating in the water down there that they couldn't tell the wheat from the chaff. So I think we need to lessen our footprint. And if part of that solar, part of that, so I'm open to all of these things, not about quote climate change, but just finding a way to lessen the millions and billions of people's impact on this planet. That's kind of my thing. But specific to the Iran war, Zakaria makes a couple of good points here. He says that because of this, and I guess he's inferring that Europe had kind of not, pulled away. I wouldn't say pulled away, but not really tried to expand solar and wind energy as much as they were. But now they are. because they're worried about being able to get oil. And China controls 91% of the global solar panel manufacture now, 89% of lithium ion battery, and 70% across the board of what you would label clean energy technology. China's dominating that field right now.
Well, they are, because these other countries, the European Union, us, are doing subsidies into green energy. But then you look at Spain, they were having a problem with their power grid. France has had a power problem with it, and the European Union in general, because they've outlawed nuclear reactors. They got rid of their coal power fire plant, and so they're energy deficient. China is the winner on this because, yeah, we'll you guys get in the Paris Climate Accord and you agree to all these green things and subsidies. We'll make the green stuff, but at the same time, we're going to be putting in a coal power coal-fired power plant, and they're doing one a week around the world. So, they're benefiting from this naivety of people. And I agree with you. We need to lower our footprint. It's like if you see a piece of trash on the road, I pick it up. If I'm walking, I pick it up. We need to be responsible people. But when you're looking at Africa, that they have to import 38 or 85% of their food, and that population's looking to double by 2050, and they can't feed themselves now. If you look at the trash in the ocean, because you're talking about couldn't find the plane because of the trash, there's 5 countries that account for about 90% of the trash in the oceans, and they don't have garbage service, just basic garbage service where they can process garbage. So they throw it in the rivers and streams, and it washes down. It's out in the ocean. That's the biggest source of the trash in the oil or in these oceans. And so that was one of my arguments on Africa. You've got all this stuff going on. You're going to double your population. You can't feed the population you have now. Does anybody see a problem coming up? And it all goes back to the basics, John. Basics have to be dealt with in a society. You can't have a civil society if you can't feed yourself. We're talking about water. They don't have basic water infrastructure. I brought up Haiti. Less than 20% of the people in Haiti have potable water in the 21st century in the Western Hemisphere. I think they're part of that, aren't they? I mean, they're here. And it comes back to bad governance. Nigeria was wanting us to put money through the DFC, the Development Finance Corporation, to subsidize loans in Nigeria. They wanted 8%. I said, well, what are you paying now? Well, we're paying 30% through the banks. I says, your own country is allowing 30% in the banks, but you want American taxpayers to come subsidize us at 8%? I said, that's not going to fly. I says, get on your government and raise heck with them and say, we're going to lower these rates. I'm not going to ask our American taxpayers to do that. No. So let China do it.
Absolutely. Well, prop number 3 on his list, and I would put this, if I'm not saying he's doing them in order anyway, but I would put this right at the top. And you've talked about this before, Ted, that one of the goals of China, and it's happening under the Iran war, is to weaken the U.S. dollar dominance. Iran is trying to set up a situation where they take crypto money or the renminbi, is that how you say it? Renminbi, which is the Chinese dollar, on that, trying to make the U.S. not the world standard for money exchange and that type of thing. This probably is the gravest threat to the American economy and America's standing in the world if that actually totally happens. And it is happening. There's no doubt about it.
It is happening in these countries. The BRICS thing, the whole BRICS movement, it's Brazil, Russia, Iran, Saudi Arabia. They're trying to get off the petrodollar. The petrodollar is something we created after we got off the gold standard under Nixon. And that's the thing that's kept our currency strong. These countries know that. They want to break away from that. And it's real shaky. Can we hold this? If that happens, if we get off the petrodollar, we're going to have the scenario that Freddie Wiebe told us about the countries he lived in, where I brought this up at these meetings. I said, if the American dollar, if we can't get our house in order, if we're pushing $40 trillion in debt, and the rest of the world knows that. And if our dollar collapses, you'll get a notice the next day you wake up, says, currencies collapse, it's worth 30 cents on the dollar, and you have 30 days to turn it in, and then it goes to zero. If that happens, this whole scenario changes. We will not be the leader in anything other than the leader in the world's biggest debt.
Absolutely.
Well, wait, before we go on, this is where I get really aggravated with Congress, because they'll have all these silly hearings. Who do you hear in Congress talking about getting our debt under control? You know, they chastise Trump and Elon Musk for Doge. That was, and I brought this up at the meeting, you know, austerity measures are when things get real tough in your household and you've got to cut back on things. Austerity measures have happened in Italy, Germany, France, all these countries that, and Greece is probably one of the last ones, where the country goes broke, so they cut social programs. Everybody is out in the street rioting, and then you go through that adjustment. What Doge did, and I brought this up, since everybody claims foreign assistance is 1% of our nation's spending, so that was a austerity measure, and you saw all the fallout from that. People saying Trump did this and that. That was 1%. If our dollar collapses, Social Security, Medicare, food stamps, all those social programs are going to be cut drastically. And that's why members of Congress should be focusing on the existential threats of this country. They're not doing it. They sit there and tell you how hard they're working. Or I started the first women's caucus in Congress. You know, that's great you did that, but what are you doing about the debt? You know, and that's where I really get irritated with people in Congress.
Absolutely. Well, the thing about it, they're both, and I hate to say it because it probably denigrates drunken sailors, but both sides of it.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they spend money like drunken sailors. They just spend it on different things. And like Thomas Hayes Morrison, kind of a friend and certainly a mentor of mine, I know you know him well, said there's really one government. There's the party of big government with a left
party of big government,
right wing, and he's right, because
he sure is.
That Republicans have done is to talk about it differently and change at times the rate of increase, but none of them have cut the budget really at all.
No, they have to come up with a different game plan. You know, and Xi Jinping did this with his people probably 2 or 3 years ago. He told people, prepare for hard times. Hard times are coming. He's preparing for war. He's preparing for them to cut back and do voluntary austerity measures and get used to it. Of course, they weren't used to the spoils we've had, or the privileges we've had with all the blessings we've had as a nation. And you don't see a lot of people hurting here. Yes, there are people. So I don't want to have people saying, well, you're saying nobody's hurting you. Oh, there's people dying in the streets. So he's preparing his people for tough times. And that's where our politicians need to come in and say, listen, guys, we're $40 trillion in debt. This is unsustainable. We are going to have to cut back. And I want you to help us cut back. And we're all Americans in this, and this is our fight together.
Yeah, well, basically, at the end of this article, Fareed Zakaria talks about, you know, the main aims that President Trump talked about originally, kind of regime change. He pulled away from that. The nuclear, obviously, is the biggest thing, and keeping the strait open and all that, which basically none of that has really been totally achieved. Maybe the nuclear as far as curtailed, which is, I'm not downplaying that. But China, as he says here, appears to steady, pragmatic, and effective. The U.S. appears overextended and strategically unfocused. And if true, that really smarts. That really hurts. And I think he's got a point there, Ted.
No, he really does. I mean, you ask people, what's the direction of America now? What is our focus? What does America stand for? And you know, we've done a lot of damage here in the last 8 years. Trump's done a lot of damage with NATO. He did a lot of good with them paying into it, but then he severed that relationship. And instead of working to build that stronger, he's pushed people away. And we really need that alliance. And again, keep in mind, America is 4% of the world's population. And this is a time we really need to build these relationships up. I'm not saying roll down, roll over, and give them whatever they want. We need to have tough language, but it needs to be adult language. And people have that respect for what our nation has done in the past. And we need to rebuild that. And, China they're playing the long game. And there was something here that I wanted to drop back over. You're talking about how they control 91% of the global solar panels, lithium batteries, clean energy. They control 90 to 100% of the rare earth minerals in the world that's used for all those things. They control 30 to 100% of all of our pharmaceuticals in the world. They control the fertilizer market right now. They control over 30% of our agricultural seeds. 90% of the drones made in the world come from China. Does anybody see a problem here? They have leverage, and that we have ceded this, and it's time to get that back. And you do it by focusing on your country and getting your house in order. It's biblical. God or Jesus says, don't worry about the splinter in your neighbor's eye when you have a timber in your own. So let's take care of our place.
Well, we got a few minutes left in the show. I want to talk about worrying about getting our house in order, because we better start focusing on something that's happening right now in this country. And I'm using Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker, if you haven't heard of him, is a YouTube influencer. He's an American citizen. He's obviously fundamentalist Islamic, or at least he proposes that. He's a capitalist, even though he talks against it. But he spoke to a group called the College Democrats this past weekend. I'm going to play a snippet from his video, but he warns the Democrats and that he's coming for them. Check this out, and we'll come back and talk about it.
And all I ever hear from the people by my side is no more. And not just, thank you. And not just the no more to Trumpism, but no more to the Democrats who compromise, who conciliate, and who betray us. No more to the fascist reactionaries, but no more to the Democrats who will collaborate and cooperate with the fascists, who will fund ICE, who will fund Israel, who will help poison the planet, who will stiff workers and help bosses. We don't need those Democrats anymore. In fact, we have a message. We are coming. We are on boss. We're on bot. We're unbound. And we will become undeniable. Thank you.
Here you have this guy, Hassan Piker. He's talking to college Democrats. He is clearly telling the Democrats, they're coming for you. And so I would say, Democrats, be careful what you're voting for. And here's the thing, and we'll talk about some of his points specifically, but I want to get this out, Ted. Trump derangement syndrome, whatever, you hate Donald Trump, all of that kind of stuff. Don't have to vote for Donald Trump. But if you vote for the Democrats, you're voting for exactly what Hussein Piker is talking about, because they have the energy. They are taking over the Democratic Party.
Oh, they've taken it over. The Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer don't realize it, but they have no power in that party. And Hassan Piker, I've read on him, got his bio and all that. And he is a big influencer, but he's selling hatred, and he's an empty suit in what he doesn't believe what he stands in. Like you said, he was born in Jersey, he was raised in Turkey, and then he comes back here and he bought a $2 million house in California somewhere. And he's part of that rich elite like Ro Khanna, who's a multi-millionaire, hundreds of millions of dollars. Again, another family that comes from India. They come here, become very wealthy, and then they trash the system. And the funny thing with him is his own party is now trashing him, the Hassan Pikers. But Hassan Piker is no different. but he stands there in his little revolutionary Mao Zedong jacket, with no collar on it, and telling you how bad America is. And the funny thing is, he's attacking the Democrats that are left. I was going to say moderate Democrats. There are no moderate Democrats. And he's saying if they're not radical enough, we need to vote them out. So he's eating his own party, thinking that America's going to buy into this. And, I was surprised when I looked at that college campus, the people that were in that. Again, I didn't see any calluses on those people's hands. They didn't look like the type that had been out there and worked and earned their keep in this country.
Interestingly enough, it seems like mostly white liberals and a lot of liberal women. But he says in that video, and it's about 15 minutes long, so watch the whole thing. But he says in the clip we played, no compromise with Democrats who betray us.
No compromise.
So if you vote any way other than the hardcore left, you are betraying us. No compromise whatsoever. They're for defunding ICE, which means defund the police. They're literally, Ted, for no borders. He calls that no support of Israel. And this one part he says it's hard to catch in there, but he says anybody who helps the bosses. So I don't know who he's talking about. I guess people, the billionaires, right? But his message to the Dems, Ted, is we are coming for you. He says that they are unboxed, unbound, and undeniable. I mean, this guy's telling you in no uncertain terms, so I give him credit for that. What he's trying to do, it's up to the American people.
He's a revolutionary, is what he is. He's a revolutionary.
There's no question about that.
And he's calling for a revolution. And, somebody needs to really check into him. They really do.
But here's the thing. Don't underestimate this guy's power, okay? Because the dude has 3 million followers on what they call Twitch, which is like the left's version of Twitter or something. He has 256,000 subscribers to YouTube, and I looked at some of his viewership. His videos on YouTube average right at 250,000 people every time he does that. And check this out. His estimated net worth now for an anti-capitalist is between 20 and 35 million. And he supposedly makes at least $4 million a year. Sounds like he's one of the bosses to me.
He may be becoming a billionaire pretty soon.
It is.
It is. They sit there and they come in here and bitch, moan, and complain about America, but then they take the spoils, telling you how bad it is. AOC and Ilhan Omar, same thing. They tell you how bad America is, yet they benefit from it and say, it's not us. We just did this to show you that it's out there, but those other people are keeping this from you. And they're just a bunch of phonies is what they are.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what, if any, kind of charitable donations this guy does. He's worth, $30-40 million, making at least $4 million a year. What has he done to actually help working class Americans that he's talking about are struggling, which I'm not saying they're not, but what has this guy done to help them in any way, shape, or form?
Time will tell. Time will tell what he's done.
But the bottom line, Ted, to me, and we're almost out of time, is that the Democrats, two groups need to wake up. The Democrats, if you're a Democrat and you're not supporting even Chuck Schumer. You're supporting this guy and AOC and Bernie Sanders. You're supporting the exact thing that's going to keep everybody. They'll equal the playing field because everybody but the Hussein Pikers will be in poverty. And to everyday average Americans out there, if you don't vote, or if you vote for the Democratic Party, I want to make sure you understand, you're not voting for Josh Shapiro. You're voting for these people to take over, because that who has the money, they have the momentum, they have the volunteers. I just want people to wake up to who they're really supporting, Ted.
They really do. And, it's ignorance, John, because, again, I'm going to go back to the Aspen Institute, and I went out with my liberal Democrat colleague from the Vietnam and her friend that was from Palestine, and they were telling me how good Obama was and, how racist Trump was. And then we talked about those countries. but then I told him about the Democrat, Socialist, Communist. She goes, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Well, just in your state, in Bronx, they put out Dan Golden. They threw him out, and he was a liberal progressive, but not enough. And they brought in Chevalier, who was a Columbia University led to pro-Palestinian, protests and all that. And I said, she is elected, and she said she is there to destroy Western ideology." And she goes, "I don't believe that." I says, "Research it." I said, "I saw her saying these at campaign speeches. I've read stuff where she said this." And I says, "This is the person, and I'm not going to ask you if you voted for her, but this is the person taking over. And you're telling me you don't know, because what it is, it's ignorance. They just don't go, they go by what Hassan Piker is saying, or Candace Owens, or Tucker Carlson. Somebody, they're just going out there to get likes. And you pointed out very well, Hassan Piker has got, he's worth 20 some $million supposedly, and he lives in a multi-million-dollar home in California, and he's telling you how bad America is. Give me a break. Throw these guys out of here. Don't vote for them, because they're going to destroy the country that we're living in, that you hopefully want to pass on to your children.
Well,
They're phonies.
There was a guy that his initials are TJ that said years ago, if you want to be both ignorant and free, you want what never was and never will be. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our show today. I hope you like what we're doing, share what we're doing far and wide, make that call Freddie, become a sponsor of the show, help us to get this message out. Take us out, Ted.
Yeah, we appreciate you watching. Spread our message far and wide. And if you have any questions, send them to our account. And don't forget to visit our sponsors, Archer Automotive and Transmission Repair, located in the metropolis of Archer, 13750 Southwest Archer Road. They're open Monday through Friday from 7:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Your full auto and truck, gas and diesel mechanics. They'll treat you right. You guys take care, and we'll see you on Friday.
Absolutely. Have a blessed day. Remember, we're now on every day, Monday and Fridays at noon, wherever you're watching us now. Of course, you can watch us at any time. Peace out, everybody.
See you later.